Hello and welcome to my devlog. My name is Jarmo and this is episode 2. In this episode, I will cover how to create a plugin project with Flax Engine. When I first set down this path, I didn't quite know what to expect. I searched the Flax Engine manual for all the information on plugins and then began the effort. Through working with the engine developer, Mephisto, I was able to learn of several things that I needed to do that weren't in the docs. I submitted a documentation PR to help other people along the process, and I'm putting this video together to document what worked for me. Hopefully this can be of service to you. Okay, so without further ado, there are 9 requirements that we'll need to do in order to get our plugin to show up in the editor and be working with our game code. Number 1, we'll need to create an empty game project. Number 2, we'll need to create an empty plugin project in the plugins directory of the game project. We'll need to create the MyGamePlugin export properties.cs file. We'll need to rename the plugin project, source files, and class names. Number 5, we'll need to add in external libraries and native DLLs. Number 6, add the plugin project to the main game through the .flax project file. Number 7, add in unit tests through separate projects. Number 8, run generate project script files to generate our solution and to build the game and check for the plugin in the editor. Without further ado, I will get started. Okay, so the first things first. If you need to get information on plugins, consult the Flax Engine manual, search for plugins. This first index.html file for plugins communicates how to add external file references to your project, lists out plugin descriptions, and the types of plugins. There are 2 types. There are game plugins and there are editor plugins. This video I will only be discussing game plugins. Okay, so we'll need to do step number 1, which is create an empty game project. To create an empty game project, launch the Flax launcher, go to the Projects tab, and do a new project. In this example, my new game project is titled Flax Wars. Once you've created that, go ahead and take a look at the contents of the root directory. You won't have as many things as I do here, but you'll have all the defaults. In order to generate the .solution file and the .cs project file, you'll need to open the editor and double-click a .cs C# source file, for example, exit on escape or free camera, from within inside the editor. That will then open your project in an IDE and it will generate some of these solution and project files for you. The next thing we need to do is create an empty plugin project in the plugins directory. So come back to your root directory, create a new directory called plugins. This isn't mandatory, this is just how I've done it. And you'll leave this directory empty. You'll then come back to the Flax launcher, create a new project of type basic scene or blank, and navigate to the plugins folder that you just created. You'll give your plugin a name. I would recommend using the suffix of plugin, and then create your project. Once that project is created, it will create its own directory with contents inside. Again, these contents will not include the .solution file or .cs project file. So you'll need to open the Flax project in the editor and double-click on a source file. Step number 3 is to create the MyGamePlugin.cs file, which contains all of the export properties for your plugin. These are the properties that will show up in the game editor. So coming back over here to Writer, I created a MyHeroCrab plugin.cs file. This can be copied from an example on GitHub for game plugins. There is a MyExample plugin. And then you will fill in any information here you want from the properties. There are more than what I have listed here. These are just the ones I'm taking advantage of. And then I customize the debug logs just so I can verify that my plugin is working. On to step number 4. This is the most critical step. It's also the most labor intensive. You'll need to rename the plugin project, project files, source files, and class names. Now there shouldn't be very many of these created by default for you. So how you'll do that is you'll come back out to your plugin directory and you'll start renaming contents. So for example, the .solution file, you can rename the file and then search for the plugin name inside. Search for game. Why are we doing this? Because when you created the first game, the primary game, it's created by default with a prefix of game. All of the source files have the prefix of game. When you created the second project, it created the plugin project with a prefix of game. When we go to build the solution, these namespaces, they'll all be put essentially in the same global context and they will collide within the namespace. So you'd have the same name for different source files and different class names. That's why we're renaming the plugin. So again, you'll come back into this directory, you'll rename the solution file, you'll rename the Flax project file. You'll need to come into the Flax project file and rename the game and editor targets. Remove game and put your plugin name. Go into the source directory, find your CS project file. You'll rename that. You'll rename anything with game in here. It's actually not too bad when you get to it. And then you'll rename the build script and the build script class name. You may have to do this exercise once or twice to get everything renamed. But once all that's renamed, then we're ready to move on to step 5. Step 5, add in external libraries and native DLLs. So for my project, I'm using an eNet networking sublayer, and I've come in and modified the build script. There are a number of things you can do here with the build scripts, and there are options. All the options are available in the Flax Engine manual. In my case, I needed to copy this native DLL, enet.dll, to the output directory. So I positioned it in a library directory, along with my managed enet C# DLL. This build script will copy enet.dll. It will also copy enet.c# DLL and add references to the CS project file so that I can access the namespace and class names of the enet C# DLL. Step number 6, add the plugin project to the main game.flax project. So this can be seen in the documentation. Under plugin projects, you'll see an example of how to reference the plugin project from the game project. I've done this here in my Flax project. I've added a reference to the plugin. Step number 7. In my case, I wanted to add in unit tests to the main project, to the game project, so that I can do everything from within one .solution. So to see this, essentially there are a couple things you need to do to make this happen. The first thing I did was copy all of the source files into my plugin. So I have 2 projects. I have an integration test and a unit test. I created folders for them inside of my plugin source file. I copied all the source into them. And then I create the CS project already existed, right? These are existing unit tests. And then I created the Hero Crab plugin test integration build CS file, which you can see here on Writer. So you'll need to modify the plugin targets, the game project target, and the editor project target to reference your module, your titled after essentially your plugin. And then you'll create Hero Crab, you'll create basically target files which specify a type output of .NET and reference your CS project. Why is this required? So when the build scripts run, they'll take a look for any of these target files, any class inheriting target or implementing target, and it will update the solution file with whatever's included in this reference. This is necessary because if you don't do this and you come in and you add your unit tests into your project, if you then cook the game or come out of the game and do a generate script project files from the .flex project, it will update this .solution and it will exclude your unit tests. So you'll be adding them, you'll build, they will be gone. You'll have to re-add them. So this is how you get around that. You can add a reference through this target file by referencing the .cs project. Okay, one item I wanted to reiterate here is that for the plugin target build CS file and the editor target build CS file, you'll need to reference the module of your plugin. Okay, on to step 8. If you've done everything correctly, which it may take you a couple times to figure out the renaming, it's not too bad. What you'll do is you'll need to come out to your main game .flex project, right-click on the .flex project and do generate scripts project files. This will take a minute or two to run. Well, not really a minute, a couple seconds. And it will update your .solution file. So this is what's going to be showing you all of your reference projects, your plugin project inside the solution for your main game. If it doesn't work, if you have problems running it or it fails, then chances are you've missed something in steps 4 through 7. Either the renaming of something is not correct or complete, or your path is possibly incorrect on your native DLLs. Actually, in most cases, you won't see an issue with the path until you build the game for step 5. Step 6, you may have an invalid path or something referencing your plugin project. Or step 7, you may have an invalid path or something referencing your unit tests. Okay, so after step 8 is run, the next test is to build the game and then check the plugin inside the editor. Just a reminder from my first video, I'm using a command line arguments for the editor, running it in headless mode so that I can build my game project from my IDE. And it completed with no errors. So before we go and inspect the editor to see if our plugin shows up, I will mention a couple things that I learned not to do. And I don't know exactly why in some of these cases, but a couple things that I don't do after playing with this for a little while is I've learned not to add anything to the solution unless I'm updating the build scripts, number 1. I don't try and come in here and add anything just like it's a .NET project. I figure out what needs to be added in the build scripts to get it to show up correctly. Because I know when cooking the game or building the game that this environment can be reset. Let's see, another thing I've learned not to do is I never run, and I mean I can show it on this video, but if you run generate scripts project files on the nested game plugin, it's going to rewrite some of the parameters in this .cs project file for the plugin, and it seems that I will lose references inside this solution for the main game. So I generally only run generate scripts project files from the main game project, and that seems to work every time, no problems. Okay, so we've completed our build. The last thing to do here is to check the plugin. So I will open my main game, go up to Tools, Plugins, and here you can see the plugin is showing up. So that is essentially the end of the content for this video. After working with the plugin system, I'm quite excited to start building my game, start designing my game, and take advantage of the plugin. I'm also excited to release the plugin open source once I have some good verifiable, use case and demonstration. And I hope that if you're watching this video and you're going down this path, that you'll find what you're missing, or that this can be of value to you and you'll save some time on the journey. Thanks for watching.